1. Loneliness. Artem was left alone in the village house. His parents had gone away on business, and he was told not to go anywhere. The house was old, wooden, creaky, coals crackled in the stove, filling the room with a dim orange light. Outside the window a winter blizzard raged. The blizzard howled in the chimney as if something was trying to get in. 2. Strange sounds. Toward midnight, the house was filled with strange sounds. It seemed as if someone was walking on the roof, scraping at the walls. Artem decided that it was just the wind. He sat down at his desk, opened his laptop, but the battery was almost dead. Whatever, he muttered, deciding to go to bed. 3. Voices in the dark. Artem woke up to a sound. At first he thought he was dreaming, but then he heard a distinct knocking sound. It came from the side of the door, slow, heavy, as if someone was hitting it with his knuckles. The boy held his breath. His heart beat faster. Then silence. And then a voice, hoarse, inhuman. Let go, me. 4. Shadows outside the window. Artem jumped out of bed, ran to the window. In the light of the moon, he saw something behind the glass. A tall, twisted figure, long arms, curled fingers with black claws. The face was hidden by shadow, but he could see the eyes, two burning embers in an endless void. The creature tilted its head as if studying him, then thin lips spread in a horrible grin. 5. The locked door. Artem rushed to the front door and checked the lock. It was locked. The creature couldn't have gotten in, right? He could hear its breathing behind the wall. Nasty, intermittent. Silence. But suddenly the light in the room went out. The fire in the stove went out. Darkness filled the house, and with it came the cold. 6. It's inside. The floorboards creaked. Artem shrank into a corner, afraid to even breathe. The creature moved through the house, unhurriedly, as if enjoying the moment. You, here, it hissed. Suddenly, a hand appeared from behind a closet. Long, bony fingers slid slowly across the wood. Artem screamed and rushed to the window. 7. Running into a blizzard. He didn't remember running outside. The cold hit his body, but the fear was stronger. The blizzard hid everything but one thing, the silhouette by the door. It stood there, watching, not moving. Then it took a step forward. 8. Disappearance. The next morning, the parents found the house open, and inside only claw marks on the walls. Artem was never seen again. Only in the village. Since then there have been rumors that winter nights in the windows of old houses appear two burning eyes. 1. In search of a sensation. Andrew held the camera in front of him, illuminating the peeling walls of the old mental hospital with a flashlight. Well, guys, this is going to be my creepiest content yet, he whispered into the lens, smiling. His YouTube channel only had a couple thousand subscribers, but he believed this video would blow up the internet. People were said to have disappeared in this place, and in the hallways you could still hear the moans of patients who had died here decades ago. With a creak of the door, he stepped inside. 2. The emptiness breathing down the back of his neck. The hospital greeted him with a sepulchral silence. Only the echo of footsteps echoed in the abandoned wards. Andre swept the flashlight across the peeling walls, where faded photographs of doctors and patients were visible. On the floor were scribbled papers, medical records, faded from time. On one of them he noticed a name, patient number 47, obsession, aggression, disappeared November 17, 1986. The flashlight flickered on, and at that moment a quiet creaking sound was heard in the distance. 3. Someone is here. Andre froze. It's the wind. It's just the wind, he whispered under his breath. But the creaking was repeated. It was coming from the corridor leading to the basement. The blogger slowly pointed the camera toward the dark passage. Well, now that I'm here. With each step down, the air grew colder. The smell of dampness and something rotten hit his nose. And then he heard footsteps. 4. Patient 47. It wasn't an echo. Someone was pacing nearby. Andre froze, holding his breath. His camera trembled in his hands. Suddenly the flashlight flashed and highlighted a shadow in the distance. A figure stood, swaying slightly, tall, gaunt, with a haggard face and empty eye sockets. A low, wet wheeze sounded from the torn mouth. Who are you?" Andre's voice trailed off. The figure trembled, then took off and ran toward him. 5. Run. Andre turned around and rushed upstairs. Hurried footsteps sounded behind him. The camera shook, recording the frantic chase. "God, no, no, no," he gasped, but kept running. Running out into the hall, he turned around. A figure halted on the threshold of the basement. Her empty eye sockets were staring straight at him, and she was smiling. 6. Last entry. The next day, the police found only the camera in the hospital. The video ended with Andrew frozen in fear, and then the camera abruptly dropped to the floor. The last shot was of dark feet slowly coming closer. The blogger was never found, but those who watched the video claimed to have heard a low, hoarse whisper in the final seconds. "You are now patient no. 48. 1. Homecoming. Night shrouded the city streets in a clammy, cold gloom. James walked down the sidewalk with his hands in his pockets, the thin ice crunching beneath his feet. The wind crept under his clothes, making him shiver. A rare car honked in the distance, but the city as a whole seemed to have died out. He felt pleasantly tired after the party. His head was buzzing from the music and the alcohol, and all he wanted to do was get home. The path he was on passed an old phone booth. James had heard creepy stories about it when he was a kid. They said that if you picked up the phone, you could hear someone's voice, even if no one was calling, and sometimes people would just, disappear afterward. But those were just legends. 2. Ringing in the void. As James approached the booth, the phone rang from inside. A sharp, unpleasant sound pierced the silence of the night. James froze. The booth looked abandoned. The glass was cracked. The rusty door creaked in the wind. Who could be calling him? A thought flashed through his mind. What if it was someone who needed help? Trying not to think about the strange rumors, he opened the door and picked up the phone. "Hello?" Heavy breathing was heard in the receiver. Then a whisper. "They're already near. Run." 3. Shadows in the fog. James abruptly pulled the phone away from his ear, his heart pounding frantically. What the hell? Silence. No laughter. No rustles. Just night. He looked outside. The city was the same empty streets, sparse lights in the windows, nothing out of the ordinary. But then he heard footsteps. Muffled, slow, like someone moving on the sidewalk. But there were too many footsteps. James looked around and spotted them. Figures, tall, unnaturally thin. They were walking down the street, but not like normal people. Their movements were jerky, broken, like marionettes in the hands of an invisible puppeteer. Their faces were hidden in the shadows, but he saw the eyes, bottomless, shimmering, hungry. 4. Run. Panic squeezed his throat. James recoiled into the depths of the phone booth, gasping. The figures were slowly approaching. "Just a dream," he muttered. "Just drunken glitches." They were getting closer. Abruptly, James turned and ran. His heart thundered in his chest. The dim light of street lamps illuminated the street, but every time he looked back, the shadows seemed closer and closer. He turned down an alley, but there was another figure, tall, with long arms. It seemed to grow out of the darkness. A voice in his head whispered, "It's too late." 5. Disappearance. He jerked backward, but his legs got tangled and he fell. The cold asphalt hit his chest, knocking the air out. There was no longer a city around, only darkness. Figures leaned over him. The last thing he heard was the phone ringing. Sharp, shrill, and then silence. 6. Morning. The next morning, the town woke up as usual. The phone booth stood still. The wind shook the rusty door. No one else had seen James, but now the phone rang more often, and anyone who picked it up heard a familiar trembling voice. "They're near. Run."